Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast, the podcast for women who want it all. Health, wealth, freedom, authenticity, love, beauty, all of the hidden gems just waiting to be uncovered. This is the podcast for women who are ready to discover their inner creatrix, to discover their inner manifester, and who want to find the ecstatic in every day. Hi, and welcome back to the Ecstatic Life Podcast. I'm host Nicole Goff, and today I am here with Cindy Scharkey, and she is a healthcare professional with nearly 40 years of experience as a certified childbirth educator, an OBGYN nurse. She is also a speaker and an educator, and her passion is to change the silence and shame that surround women's sexuality. She educates and guides women to explore how to have a more loving, empowered relationship with their bodies, with sex, and with pleasure. And as the host of the Permission for Pleasure podcast, Cindy offers education and conversations about expressing, experiencing, and enjoying your sexuality. She is also the author of the book Permission for Pleasure, Tending Your Sexual Garden, which I cannot wait to talk about on this podcast today. And I will say I am so appreciative of you being here. I was just saying before we hit record, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time. And so thank you so much, Cindy, for coming on and talking with my audience about this.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Literally, hopefully.
Literally. I'm delighted to be with you. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Well, so that was one of the first things you said in my intake that I asked you, like, where did this start? So this starts with your pleasure. So I would love to hear just a little backstory of how you got into this work.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I've been a nurse, for 4 decades, and I've worked a lot of women's health, all different areas of women's health, other things too, but I'll just over the year, and I have 3 daughters. Okay. So I had a lot of girls in my home all the time, lots of girls. And
I have 4.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah.
And I just found that there was a lot of silence around our bodies, sex and pleasure. I grew up with a lot of silence around body, sex, and pleasure. And I really became comfortable talking about it. I'm not sure how. Maybe it's just nursing. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just interaction with women year after year after year. And I came to really care about this topic for women and to educate them about their bodies, about pleasure, and provide what so many people don't have through the course of their life. I'm not just talking about puberty, right? I'm not talking, growing up is a whole thing. But then we get into our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, and life changes and we change, and the education needs to be ongoing. And we're sorely lacking in this country. So
we're sorely lacking when it comes to puberty too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, I remember, it's like, this is how you put a condom on a banana, and that's about it. Right.
Right. Well, and I had so many girls in my home that had so many questions around so many things and didn't feel comfortable talking to their own parents about it. Maybe because I'm a nurse, I have credibility that way, of course, because I have training and education. But I became Mama Shark, basically. My last name's Sharkey, and everybody just came and we chatted. I taught everybody how to do this, how to do that, not outside of their parents, but just day-to-day conversations. And one of my daughters told me recently that she learned a lot just from listening to me talk to all her friends.
It's sad what we don't even know about our cycles. Things that I learned as a doula and as a mother of 5, I honestly, until I started doing my training in birth work, I didn't know physiological birth. I didn't know how how our babies really got here, you know? And when it comes to our cycles, how many of us have spent our entire lives, I mean, just in the last few years for me, not understanding how our cycles really work. So,
Sure.
you know, we're not educated, and we should be. We should be from, you know, I'm teaching, my girls are 5 to 19, and I'm teaching them everything I can now, but most parents are too uncomfortable to have that conversation.
And what I want to say, Nicole, is that it's never too late. It really isn't. And learning to talk about sex is a skill you can learn. It is a learnable skill. And yes, it's uncomfortable. And there's a piece there that's just saying, I'm going to step into being uncomfortable. And then the more we do it, the more comfortable we become.
Yeah.
But let's call it out for what it is, because certainly it's uncomfortable if you've never, talked about it before. And that's why I encourage parents to start early, even littles, name their body parts, call them call their genitals what they are.
Yeah.
Give them framework for their own body, help them have autonomy. Starts early, but if you didn't start early and you're listening, you can start anytime.
Most of my audience is moms, and
Okay.
most of them would fall into the 20 to 40 category. And so this is perfect. It's perfect to talk about that. One of the main things that I really wanted to talk about that I'm so excited to dive into, though, is actually how our bodies change. And this is another thing that it kind of blindsided me. Again, with birth and not understanding how physiological birth is. I'm like, why isn't this wisdom that was passed down from my mother's generation? Why didn't I have that wisdom? But, after kids, how much our bodies change. And that was a big shock to me, and I'm still learning, my body is totally new now.
Well, and it will continue to change. So, your audience sounds like, they're in the just the middle of some changing, some not. But one of the biggest things I encourage women to do is to get to know their own body now, wherever they are in their age and stage and season. I have so many women I've worked with, they've never even looked at their vulva. They've never looked at their whole body and understood what it looks like, what it feels like. And it's just an important learning educational step to understanding ourselves.
There's so much shame wrapped around that, though.
Yes, there is.
And I think that's one of the things that I've tried very hard not to put on my daughters. Is I think so many of us were conditioned from such an early age that to touch your body, and especially to feel pleasure, even just, innocent, touching your body is seen as somehow wrong. And we feel that so deeply inside of ourselves.
Yes. And I can't remember who said this. I was talking to Matthias Roberts on my podcast at one time, and he said, I think it was one of his mentors, but they said, where there is sex, there is shame. And that is how I found it working with women all these years.
That's so sad, though, because it shouldn't be that way. I mean, that's how we all got here. We all got here through sex. It should be part of just the most normal thing in life, birth and death and, and
all of it.
Yeah. And yet there's this whole thing that's been, twisted up in these stories that we hold deep in our bodies for our entire lives.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book and wrote it in the way I wrote it, because what I found is so many people come for consults or when I do workshops, and they're so sure that the issue is sex. And truly, so often the issue is deeper than that, in the roots that need to be untangled and unwound around sex and the shame and the missed messages and the boxes they've been put in that no longer serve them. And so that's why I ended up writing the book. I never thought I would be a writer. That's not my forte, is to speak. So, but I just found that I wanted women to have something tangible in their hands with practices and questions and prompts to unravel that for themselves and come to their own place of really being comfortable with their sexuality.
Yeah, I haven't read the book yet, but I did listen to the excerpts on your podcast. Good. Yeah, and I will pick it up because it looks like something that I would love to dive into. But if you just want to talk a little bit more about that, I mean, the title itself, so permission for pleasure, like for someone who has all this shame and guilt that are wrapped up in their sexuality, like where do you even start?
I often start with just having people journal, or if they're not journalers, however they can put forward the messages that they have heard and come to believe or want to question, and how they feel about sex, what are they looking for from sex, what do they think of as love, what do they think of as sex. There's so many deeper questions around this topic about how we feel about our bodies. Do we understand that sensuality and sexuality are indeed different things? What kind of messaging do we have around pleasure? So many people, I say pleasure, or my podcast is Permission for Pleasure, or the book, and they're just like, oh, when you say pleasure, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable. Oh, that is the crux of we're in a pleasure crisis, basically, in a lot of ways. And we don't give ourselves permission to experience pleasure day to day, moment to moment, what we see, hear, taste, smell, imagine, let alone with sex, especially women.
Yeah.
And so that's really my passion, is to help women unravel those things and figure out what is no longer serving them, what they can let go of, how to do that, and then how to embrace giving themselves permission.
Yeah.
We all deserve pleasure. And it matters. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I coach on a lot too. And like I said, with just like the simple act of like touching your body, self-massage. I did a podcast about that, and we're not talking about self-pleasuring, just actually putting your hands on your body and giving yourself a massage. Even that can be so alarming for most people's nervous systems because we have been taught to outsource.
Yes.
We've been taught to outsource that pleasure, which makes it something that is not very attainable. How often can you go to the spa? How often can you go to a massage therapist? And so even that idea of like touching your body on a daily basis is weird for most people.
It is. Yes. And the whole concept of sensuality and experiencing pleasure through our senses, and embracing that. And dialing up pleasure in that way. So I'm a big smell senses girl. So if I see lavender, I run my hand along it and I bring it to my nose. If I cut a lemon open, I bring it to my nose. If I see some basil, anything that I know has a scent, I engage with it. I say, where do I feel that in my body, and how does that make me feel? I didn't start really embracing this till my 50s, and it has really changed my way of being in the world.
Yeah. And so I have started with my kids. We have a homeschool cooperative, and we bring in fresh herbs. And so we get them to engage with their senses and talk about like, what does that bring up? What, does that olfactory memory bring up for them? And so, teaching them how to engage in that way with the world. Just the pleasure you can get from engaging, and also visually, auditorially, just the pleasure you can get from engaging with your surroundings. Yeah.
And for your listeners who, if they're thinking, well, what does that have anything to do with sex? Right? Well, this is the thing, is when what I have found, and the research does show, is if we engage in these sensual practices outside the bedroom, we are more apt to bring those practices in the bedroom and be able to really activate our senses for pleasure. And it's just a beautiful way to be.
Yeah, and so, that's another thing that I kind of wanted to bring into this conversation. So, how important I have found it is now in midlife to bring in some of those aids. I don't know if that would be the right word, but
Sure.
the scented candles and the lighting and the music to bring all of my senses into the bedroom. Whereas it used to be my husband and I could be anywhere. It didn't matter the setting, just that we were in each other's presence was completely enough.
And as relationships, move on in years, typically this is normal, what you're describing. We get to a place where we need to create an environment for sex and intimacy. We need to cultivate curiosity. Desire isn't always, tapping us on the shoulder, hurry, hurry. It can operate in a lot of different ways. And people don't understand that piece alone, how desire really works. Love to talk about that if you'd like to, but
Absolutely.
that can change the game, just that alone. So could we just jump into that?
I would love to.
Okay, great. Because this is just so important for people to understand. There's so much conflict around how we come to desire because we don't all come to desire in the same way. And we don't all come to desire in the way you see in the movies. So if you don't come to desire in a spontaneous way out of the blue, see your partner, you think they look great, you're like, I want to jump them, let's do it, spontaneous desire, right? And we see that in the movies all the time, right? In media. But a lot of people come to desire from a responsive way, meaning they have to feel arousal in order to spark desire. So for them, it's their partner comes up and nuzzles their neck. Look, I'm touching mine. Nuzzles their neck or, starts whispering in their ear and gives them a tight hug and tells them how much they love them and something hot that they love about them. And all of a sudden their body wakes up and says, oh, I like that. Oh, my toes feel tingly. I feel warm inside. I remember that. Ooh, I think I want to have sex. That's responsive desire. That is a normal way to experience desire. You can experience it both ways, one way, but as we age, many people do move into more responsive desire.
I wonder too the amount of years that you have been with someone, because I think so. Me and my husband have been together for 13 years now, and I know part of it is age, but then part of it is the familiarity.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
what do you have to say about that and a long-term relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I was with the love of my life for almost 40 years, and he and I used to talk a lot about this in the sense of how do you, as we age and stage, talking about sex and how we turn ourselves on, how we turn ourselves off, and being really open and honest about timing and circumstances and environment and for me, it was learning to just do what I needed for the environment to make it conducive for me to enjoy sex, especially at the stage you're in. When you have littles or teens or aging parents or you're at the height of your career, I mean, there's so much happening at this age where you are.
So easy to get distracted.
It is so easy to get distracted. And so, I mean, the long-term relationship piece, I could spend a lot of time on that, but I would say learning to talk about sex is key there. It really is key. And people that describe having extraordinary sex in the research are over 50. So they have learned to talk about sex. They have learned to create the environment they want. They have learned to make adjustments and accommodations without resentment. They have, it's those years of learning those things that are really key. The stage you're in, though, I mean, you're in the thick of what I call the energy tank dilemma. So people seem to think that your energy for sex comes from a different tank. It comes from the same tank as everything else. So your energy for sex comes from only one tank that you have. If your tank is empty, you're not going to have energy for sex. That's a normal way to be.
Yeah.
You're nodding your head.
I have 5 kids. I know about that tank.
I heard you. And that is, that's a big factor in this stage of life that people are in, where you are. It's your energy level is low because there's so many things drawing on your energy. And a lot of times what people end up doing is leaving sex for the last thing of the day when your energy is in the toilet.
Yes. And I love some of the tips. So listening to your podcast and looking at your social media, I love some of the tips you put out there, because you had said that for women specifically, our libido is the highest in the morning.
Men too. All our hormones are higher in the morning.
And of course, like that's why if you're testing for pregnancy, you pee on the stick first thing in the morning. But it never occurred to me until I read it on one of your posts, and I was like, of course.
But so many people push back on, they're like, no, just no in the morning. I think what I want to say to that is, that's okay if you're not a morning person, but occasionally, could you flip that and try morning and see how it is for one or the other of you? Getting out of the routine of it being only one way, only one place, only one time does a lot for sparking desire. Because when sex is not interesting, it's hard to be interested.
I found myself there.
Yeah, that's a stare
after 10
Perel.
years. Yeah.
It's very normal. Very normal. I think the other thing is we get this crazy idea like we're supposed to go on date nights and then it should end in sex. And I don't know if you saw my other tip there is sex should be your appetizer, not the dessert.
Yep.
Once you eat a big meal and you do the whole date, all your blood flows going to your digestion, your energy, you're full, it doesn't work well. So think appetizer, not dessert.
That was another one that I was like, well, of course. Of course that makes sense. Yeah, but we don't think about these things. And especially I think, like you're speaking to my age, like we're so caught up in the day-to-day with kids too.
Sure.
The scheduling and the planning, and that we're just so it does end up being this afterthought. And it's like, after the kids get to bed, after dinner, after the laundry, after, and then it is an afterthought. And so I feel like, thinking about these tips. And another one that you had said was to kind of stoke the fires throughout the day, and again, thinking about it. So waking up in the morning and thinking about it throughout the day, making suggestive comments or things like that. So it's not just this afterthought that you maybe get to after you're done with, watching TV or whatever.
Yes. And those little thoughts along the way help you think about sex. A lot of women, especially if they're caring for littles, I've found, or aging parents, or their job is so intense, they don't think about sex. There's no space for that, right? And so this kind of focus of letting it be part of what you think about and then communicating that to a partner if you're partnered, that does help spark erotic energy. And the other 2 tips probably would be from the Gottmans, especially with the 6-second kiss. Have you heard that? People laugh. They're like, Cindy, really? Come on now. But I'm telling you, when was the last time you kissed for at least 6 seconds that wasn't related to sex? See, that's the key. Okay, so when I first heard the Gottmans talking about this, and they're the relationship gurus, I told my husband, we're going to start kissing for 6 seconds. And he's like, what are we going to do? We're going to count like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000 in our mouths or what? What are we going to set a timer? I go, okay, yeah, whatever one you want to do, right? And we laughed and just, it was hysterical at first. And then it got to be a really solid part of our, not routine, but day to day connection. And a 30-second hug can help in the same way, because a 30-second hug and a 6-second kiss will release oxytocin, which is, this is, I'm sure you're very familiar, which will increase bonding. And, people poo-poo it, but it really can make a big difference.
Yeah, yep. And any of those little interactions, I've been very intentional trying to bring that back into my relationship the last couple of years, because, after a decade, things got pretty stale.
Mm-hmm. And that's not unusual.
Yeah, and so I've made it a very intentional thing to bring back flirting, to bring back, just more sensual touch, not in the bedroom, not, directly related to sex, but just throughout the day, and just a playful energy. And that has made such a huge difference.
And I like that word, playful, because a lot of people take sex and connection so seriously, they've lost all the play. And it's your adult playground. And I do think it's a piece that many people just, it's off their, off their radar. And it's a lot, that's a loss. It's a real loss. You mentioned the scheduling and the tasks and all the things, and that mental load is huge for people. That mental to-do list that's running in your head is a real factor for people they really struggle to settle into their bodies and enjoy sex because they can't quiet their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to call that out, because women think, they'll say, well, okay, I'll give you it. You have to be present for the sex you're having to enjoy the sex you're having.
Yeah, that was something you had mentioned in another podcast I listened to about bringing mindfulness into the bedroom. And so I thought that was very important, especially for moms or for someone at the height of their career who's just really in that go, go, go mode. And it's so hard to drop all of that. I was finding myself thinking about, who I needed to check up with, what client, and that was kind of a shock to my system. And I was like, oh wow, I'm so out of the experience. I'm projecting into the future about what I need to do after it's done. And so I had already really tried to bring a lot more mindfulness in. And I know for me and my husband, one thing, I started asking him to give me a massage first, because that would really help me to let go of all that mental load. So instead of worrying about like, oh, I need to do laundry after this, or I need to make sure to text so-and-so, I'm like in my body already. And that seemed to really help. So tips about mindfulness would be appreciated.
Yes. And Lori Brado's the guru on this for me. She wrote the book on mindfulness and sex. She's in Canada, and I've had her on the podcast. You can hear her speak about it. But mindfulness, people get all whacked out and think it has to be so, I don't know, more than it needs to be. But it is a practice. At least for me, I had to practice doing it. It wasn't what I normally was doing. And you really need to practice outside the bedroom first. So mindfulness truly, the nuts and bolts, is just recognizing when you have a thought. So say you're in the middle of making love and it comes to your head, oh, that light bulb's out in the light. Wait, do we even have any light bulbs? Wait, I can't, I don't even like that light fixture. Do you see what I'm doing there? Okay. And then you're redecorating the whole bedroom. And then, okay, so this happens. Our minds do this. So what we do is when we hear ourselves say, oh, the light bulb's out in that light, we say, okay, I see that thought. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to let that go, whether you picture a river or a path, or if you need an imagery that way. I'm going to stay where I am. I'm not going to judge myself about it. I noticed. It's okay. Where am I? I'm right here. Oh, I like how he's kissing me, or I like how that feels, or, back to, you cannot feel the sensations in your body if your mind is running off redecorating the bedroom. Truly. So practice outside the bedroom. I mean, even just try a minute and see just to be quiet and see how, if you can quiet your thoughts, right? And when thoughts come, and they will, they will, recognize it's a thought. Don't judge yourself. Let it go. Come back to the present. And then try to work up to 2 minutes, and then try it in the bedroom. And if you don't have a partner who will give you a massage, or like you talked about, that's beautiful. And I adore hearing that. Not everyone has that kind of relationship. And I really encourage women, especially moms, to take what I call transition time. This is so helpful for us to basically say, before I'm going to, especially if you're a responsive desire person. So if you're spontaneous desire, you may not need this trick. But if you're more of a responsive desire person, you need things to be happening before you feel a desire. Try just, if you know you're going to have a sex date, I call it, set yourself up with like even 5 minutes, preferably 10 or more, where you just let yourself transition. Take off all your clothes, take a quick shower, dry brush your whole body, listen to one song and dance around, do a mindfulness practice. If you have longer, soak in the bathtub, or, change into a different outfit that you think you feel really happy in, or, whatever it is that works for you. But sometimes I think we are doing a disservice to ourselves when we think we're just going to be able to jump into sex and being intimate and connection, it just out of our day, out of the blue, and drop in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a
what do you think of
transition. That I agree. That was a transition for me, because I used to be just very, quick to jump into it.
Spontaneous. Yeah.
And there was a shift, and after a couple of kids, it took me a while, and I felt almost shame and guilt about that.
Yeah,
like something was wrong with me. My body was broken somehow, like didn't get turned on the way it used to. And so I've just learned, our hormones change, our needs, our daily needs, the environment, all of that changes, and to be more gentle with myself and to give myself that transition time. And that has really helped, because I do find now, like, the sex that we are having is just as good as it was back when it was super spontaneous, before all these children.
Before all these children.
But it's different. It's different, and it has to be, feels like more intentional.
And intentional is a good word. That it does have to be intentional, just like everything else in our lives. I mean, we think we have this weird idea that sex is somehow in its own little, I don't know, realm. It isn't. It's everything else, like everything else in our lives, where we do have to be intentional if we want it to be a priority and, part of our relationship, either with ourselves or with a partner. I just do think that we tend to have changes and go through seasons. And like you're saying, we blame ourselves and shame ourselves and should all over ourselves, instead of saying, what's happening here with me? What's happening with us? Where am I at? What am I feeling? What's going on with my body? What's going on with my mind? Do I want to make a shift here? And maybe let's try that instead of the shaming and blaming and shooting ourselves into a negative spiral. I mean, I know I've done that. And more, I wish I had learned how to not do that a lot younger than I did.
Yeah, well, that's why I want to get this podcast out. I know I have a good amount of audience that is younger moms. And so I feel like learning this, and especially so that we can learn these things and pass them on to our daughters.
Sure.
That to me is just so important, that we don't allow this generational trauma to continue going forward, where we feel this shame and we have all this misunderstanding about our bodies, about our pleasure, about sex, and to be able to empower ourselves to empower the next generation so that they don't grow up with all those twisted ideas like we did.
Yes.
I mean, you brought up self-pleasuring, so that's another one. There's so much shame and misunderstanding around, and I know for me that programming has been very deep, and I'm just now starting to try to explore some of that and to try to peel back those layers of shame. And I think most of us were programmed that is bad and wrong and naughty.
A lot of people are. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I would just want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself, Nicole. That kind of programming and messaging is difficult to untangle, and it can be untangled. Whichever way people decide to go, though, with self-pleasuring, I guess what I want to say is that your body is your own, first and foremost, and your sexual relationship with yourself is your first sexual relationship, however that looks to you. This is a foreign concept for a lot of people that grow up in different conservative backgrounds, religious backgrounds, just different cultures, all of it. And yet I do think we can come to a place of learning to accept ourselves and our bodies and embracing our sexuality for ourselves first. And I do think if we could teach our daughters that, they would make good choices in deciding if and when they want to share that with someone else.
That is such an important thing. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly how I feel, because so many of us didn't even know ourselves, didn't understand our sexuality, had no relationship with ourselves in that way, and then we're just giving it away without even understanding what we're giving. And yeah.
Well, and I think that girls are pretty gatekeeped around their arousal too, and normal, natural sexual curiosity. Boys too. I mean, and that just, what I see is that then they come into partnered relationships and really struggle to feel desire, to recognize their own arousal, to embrace it, to allow it, and thus to allow pleasure. And so then when they come to me and say, I don't eat, so many come and say, I don't like sex, I mean, I do sex consults. So it's kind of like they're coming to talk about, how they feel around sex, or what's not working, or what's not happening, or why it's not, and one of the first questions I ask after these other investigative questions is, are you having sex worth wanting? If you're not having sex worth wanting, that is not a desire problem, Nicole. That's a pleasure problem. And so many women are trained out of allowing themselves pleasure that they don't see this, and they sit in shaming spirals around their desire, when in fact this is not a desire issue. You're not going to have desire for sex that's not worth having.
Yeah. And that's another education problem too, because of the lack of transparency around sex, that we don't have these conversations with our children, and they don't understand even what that means. And there's a whole other layer of that, with most women having experienced sexual trauma. which usually causes you to separate yourself in some way from that experience. So there's so much there. There's so much blocking us from really going into that pleasure.
Yes, yes. And as Holly Richmond says, I love her book, Reclaiming Pleasure for Survivors. She's also a survivor. And she says your sexual trauma doesn't inform your sexuality, it misinforms it.
Yeah.
And there are so many who have experienced some kind of sexual trauma. And that in turn leads to a misinformed sexuality. And the beautiful thing, Nicole, is that those things can be healed with the right kind of community and care. And so there's hope for that. I have so many people that tell me they have never talked to anybody ever, in their 40, 50, 60, 70. It's never too late to reach out for help on unraveling that and coming to a place of being able to heal and inform your sexuality with truth and health and the right education. So I want to leave that. I want to leave that with a hopeful piece, because there's so many who have experienced that.
Oh, yeah. The statistics are more than 50% of women, and that's just the ones that have reported.
Right.
Most don't even report. So, it's definitely, and to couple that also with the shame and the guilt, and you end up with many layers to unpeel, which I have been unpacking, for myself personally in the last 10 years, unpacking that. And there's always more layers, but of course there's hope. Also, I have found personally, and I coach the women that I work with, that the more we can embrace those daily pleasures, to not, jump straight into the sex part of it, but the more we can embrace the daily pleasures that we were talking about, pleasures that we find in the world. Even just like petting a cat. The more we can embrace that and get in touch with our sensuality in those ways, the easier it is to start embracing the sensuality in the sexual way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And it does take a little intention, like you were talking about intentionality, and it does take a little intention if you're not in the practice of, being intentional with your senses.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what would be something that you would recommend someone who's listening to this and feeling, wow, yes, I am really cut off. I'm cut off from my pleasure. I have a hard time connecting. I don't experience pleasure during sex. Like, where would you start? We talked about mindfulness, which I think is an amazing place to start.
Yeah.
But how would you recommend to people to get more in touch with their pleasure?
Ooh, big question. Well, I wrote a whole book to help you do that. Honestly,
there we go.
It's not so much like, please buy my book, but it is there is a sense in which there needs to be some time and space, like I said, to unravel these things and have prompts and questions that will help you, understand where you are. That's why, what's in there. What's in your garden? Is it weeds? Is there rocks? There's probably some, maybe some gophers. I don't know. There's going to be some worms, some fertilizer. Do you have I said in the book, do you have a bench in there where you can sit and just rest and be and try to listen to yourself? Do you have a gate where you could invite a trusted person to be in community over it with you? There's not an easy fix, there's not an instant answer, but there is a process of coming to understand our own selves first, and then another, if we choose, that is deep work and powerfully empower. It is so empowering. You can't. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And I guess I want it for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, my big thing is self-care and self-love, and I feel like these two things go hand in hand. Because part of that, it's like it gives you the permission for pleasure when you start caring for yourself. And that's what I found. I had run myself ragged, just, totally burnt myself out, and there was almost like the pleasure had just dried up, And when I started those acts of self-care, that opened things up for more pleasure. And it did. It was like those little foundational pieces, like you were saying, those questions I had to ask myself. And really, that's blossomed over the last few years into such a pleasure-filled life. The fact that, even within my marriage, it's like things have just blossomed. I don't think that would have been possible had I not done that inner work to really start taking care of myself. Yeah.
And I guess you're saying inner work, and let's be honest, it is work. It is work. It does take care and time and effort and intention. And, it's sometimes hard for women especially to allow themselves that space and time and to tell themselves they're worth it. They are worth it. They matter. Their pleasure matters.
Yes.
And, you're a testament to what can happen when you do that work. So I don't know. I know it's not all just so easy. I'm just, I'm 61. I am in a new phase and season in my life. And I will tell you, as younger women, I lost my beloved husband a year ago, and he was the love of my life, and I truly don't believe I would have survived this year and going forward without having done this work, Nicole, of learning to listen to my body and embrace a pleasure-filled life. And so I get emotional because it has served me even in this time of just shattering grief.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
So sorry for your loss.
It permeates my life now because I'm living underwater. But what I want to tell people is that, do you see how it serves you as a person, these kinds of practices for your lifetime, for the good and wonderful things and for the difficult and horrific things?
Yeah.
So it's worth your time.
Yeah. There's a practice that I have taken up for the last few years called emotional alchemy, and really getting in touch with your deep emotions. And so do you see that this, pursuit of pleasure, permission for pleasure is also connected with that, with getting in touch with your feelings, with what's going on inside of you on an emotional level also?
Oh, yes. Yes. And I do think that women especially are trained up not to even listen and pay attention and trust their bodies. And
100%.
Yes. And so in that, what happens then is we stop listening to ourselves, and we don't trust our body when she's telling us the truth. I did all the things younger. I exercised her to death, dieted her to death. I did all the things. And it did not serve me. And I work with clients all the time as a nurse who aren't listening to their body's messages and what they're saying when they're trying to whisper and tell them something. Let's say, for example, like a disease process, right? And they wait until their body is screaming at them before they come for help or aid or medical care. And so it's this whole idea of coming back to learning to listen to our bodies and what they're saying and doing it. Listening to what she's telling you and doing it. That has changed my life.
Yeah, and we've been gifted these vessels and we are the caretakers of them. And it is so important that we come into conversation with them because you're so right. As women, we are taught to really to leave our bodies in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Especially, I know, so you're in the healthcare system, you are a nurse, and like we work ourselves ragged. We go home, we take care of all the kids, we take care of our husbands, we clean the house, we do all of these things. And we're not giving ourselves that time to rest, the self-care, the self-pleasure, tending to our needs. And we become frazzled and overworked. And then it's no surprise that we break down.
Well, we do have this issue of being givers, so many of us. I mean, I'm like queen of the giving. I mean, I raised my hand. And it just is really hard to learn to not give until you're empty, like you're talking about. And also that you can receive. And I find this with pleasure and with sex. So it crosses over this sense of I can give and give and give, but I have a hard time receiving.
Well, there's a worth piece to that too. And that's another program I see in so many of us as women, that we have a hard time receiving, and even the pleasure from ourselves. It's like somehow you have to earn the right for rest, and it all just gets so twisted in there, and it's so sad because it's been a 3-year process for me to learn how to take that, to learn how to receive that, to not feel any guilt, to feel totally welcoming of pleasure. And that has been a process, and it's taken meditation and mindfulness and, some strict practices that I had to get up early and intentionally do to get there. But it has been so worth it.
I'm so delighted to hear that. Yeah, and that you're sharing it with your community, because I think when we do have community around these topics, wow, it's a beautiful way to help each other embrace being healthy all the way around, being, with our choices. And so I just delighted to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted that you came on to have this conversation, because I feel like we need to just open up the floor, open up the conversation around sex, to take it out of the taboo, to take it out of the dark, and just, that's something almost all of us literally do, so why are we not having open, honest conversations,
Yes. And it starts with ourselves.
Yes.
It starts with ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So true. Well, I'm being mindful of your time, and so I know we are reaching the end of our hour. So I wanted to invite you, though, if there's anything else that you would like to share, to leave my audience with, and also offerings that you have, how to get in touch with you. Obviously, we see your book in the background there. We've talked about that, but other ways to learn from you. I would love for you to give my audience that before we go.
Thank you. You can find me and everything on cindysharkey.com. I do have that really interesting spelling, but I'm sure you'll link it in the show notes. And you can find my blog there with lots and lots of education. I have a newsletter, Good Education for Good Sex. Send out just for you to press on the links you're interested in. Easy education right to your inbox. And again, you mentioned my podcast, Permission for Pleasure. You can find that on all platforms. And I do workshops and consults, and this is my passion. This is what I'm choosing to do with this second part of my life. And I'd love to be part of your education and, your community's learning and growing and untangling, so that we can learn to give ourselves permission for pleasure.
I appreciate it so much. And we have like barely scratched the surface here. I know we went all over, but we have barely scratched the surface. So I definitely recommend anybody that's listening to head over to her website, check out the podcast, check out the blog, and take a deeper dive, because everybody deserves to have this knowledge. We deserve to know about our bodies.
Yes.
We deserve to be in touch with our bodies. And there's so much that we don't know.
I know, we didn't even get to my whole vulva model. So
I know.
y'all come on over to the website, check out all of my IG videos and things so that you can understand more about your anatomy.
Oh, we didn't even talk about how the clitoris is a whole like web of anatomy and not just a pleasure button. Yes.
That's right. So there you go. That's your little
teaser.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here. All right. Bye.
Bye.